want to talk about how it is that Ayelet Baram-Tsabari and I came to write a recent article on competencies for science communicators and how we can teach them and what they need to learn. One of the things that Ayelet has taught me is the importance of learning theory. In 2022, I was visiting the Technion, Israel Institute of Technology, where Ayelet works. She was talking with another colleague of ours, Noah Feinstein from the University of Wisconsin, and he had talked about learning progressions, about how you learn some things and then you circle back and learn them again and learn them again. And it's sometimes called a spiral process of learning. Entirely separately, I'm part of a big project at Cornell. And as part of that, I have to come up with a training program for the graduate students and postdocs and some of the faculty about how to do good public engagement. And suddenly this idea of, learning progressions, I could use that to figure out what we're doing and what we're not doing, and therefore what the holes are. So Ayelet and we sort of talked through these ideas and talked about how we would make them work. And we talked about the general problem that we have in science communication training of we never know whether we're training scientists or graduate students who are going to do a little bit of science communication, but it's not their main thing. Whether we're talking about people who are in the science community, they see science communication as part of what they do, but their primary identity is as a scientific researcher. Or the third group, the people who really want to make science communication the center of what they do. And we ended up using a standard concept called community of practice to divide these into the occasional science communicators, the active science communicators, and the professional, the core group of science communicators.
Hello, everyone. How should we organize science communication training to achieve competencies? We wanted to specify the dependencies or path through the various topics to systematically lead students to increasing sophisticated and nuanced levels of knowledge in science communication. We wanted to understand what learning objectives are reasonable for science communicators at different levels. To achieve that, we separated general topics and cross-cutting concepts, which are relevant to all science communication, from specific topics, which are relevant only to particular domains, a method or environment. We also identify essential topics, separating them from more advanced topics. In order to do this, we used three conceptual frameworks: threshold concepts, learning progressions, and community of practice. Threshold concepts are transformative shifts in students' understanding and appreciation of the field. Once a student understands this threshold concept, the student has really crossed into a more profound understanding. But if they didn't acquire this threshold concept, then they can't move forward. What are the threshold concepts in science communication? We pointed to four of them. Audience-centered communication, so starting from the perspective of the person you're speaking with. Deficit model versus public engagement, the idea that it's not enough to give your knowledge. Values is the fundamental part of science, so understanding that it's not only about the science, and also that science has values within it, and the issue of trust. And we think that in order to acquire the new threshold concepts, you already need to acquire the former ones. The idea of learning progression is really a hypothetical model pathway of learning over a period of time. Learning progressions encompass a spiral process in which specific topics, both concepts and skills, may reoccur, but at more sophisticated and nuanced levels. The third framework we used was that of community of practice. We developed this framework by thinking of science communicators as a community of practice, of people who share the same vocabulary, the same aims, the same methods. In a community of practice, one moves from being legitimate peripheral participant to more central roles and positions. We think about learning progressions as the way to structure movement within a community of practice, especially the development of stronger identity as science communicator. So when we thought, who are we trying to teach? At the periphery, we have the occasional science communicators, and then more inside within them are the active science communicators, people that it's not their job, but definitely part of their identity. At the core, there are the professional science communicators, journalists, people who work in a museum. And of course, we need to set different learning goals for different groups of learners based on their place within the community of practice. So our methods, we began with an initial list of learning objectives from a former paper we had in 2017. And we dropped items that were related to specific science communication context, really focusing on general learning objectives at this point. Then we assigned the objectives to each level of practice. Then we added topics that were undeveloped in the 2017 paper, like digital content and user-generated content and ethics and inclusive science communication. And after we did that, we asked our colleagues to test our reorganization. After we did that, we also developed specific learning objectives for specific environments. We quickly found that the learning objectives for production of media content are really different from the learning objectives for interactions with journalists, for example, and definitely different from those of social media. So we think this is something we as a community would have to develop in the following years.